Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Happy Hour podcast. Of course, I'm Ray. I'm sitting here with Matt. And of course, Mike's old ass is off somewhere. I don't know if he's doing crack, if he's what he's doing, but he's not here. So we're once again joined by the high priest of hardcore, Psycrotes. He's going to be filling in this week for Mike. He was here last week as well.
I'm not special. I'm here all the time.
and of course, we're here live with Dave DeMarco from Crack the Sky, Dave DeMarco Band. You know, we just spoke a little bit on our exclusive Patreon. You know, we had a little bit of extra stuff. Dave showed us some of the stuff in the studio, so make sure you check that out on our Patreon. Dave, how's it going, man? Like, what all has been up during COVID and, you know, all that fun stuff?
Man, well, thanks again for having me here. First off, this is really fun. I know this is going to be different from the typical type of interview thing that I do, and that's why I like this. But no, you know, obviously the year has been full of challenges for everybody, and for all of us full-time musicians, or even part-time musicians. Gigs went dark, and we all had to find something else to do. And thankfully, I have a bunch of other things that I do other than playing music, but are still music related. I teach, I give bass lessons. Basically, all of my in-person students switched over to Skype or FaceTime, and about 2/3 of them were already there as it is. But you know, I teach students overseas and in different states and all that, so obviously that stays where it is. But all of my in-person stuff moved over to there. I do session work from my home studio here, where bands will send me songs where they don't have a bass player, or their bass player in their band can't do it or whatever. And I play bass on it. I record my parts here in the studio and send them back. And that part of the business has been flourishing over the last year. And I also compose for some TV shows. So with a couple different licensing companies. So really all I did was take all of my time, like, you know, here we are, it's Saturday night. I normally would be at a gig, and I've transferred that over into session work, recording and composing. So I'm still doing music constantly. It's just that I very, very rarely have to leave the house to do it.
Yeah, and I'm
guessing it's going to feel weird, because pretty soon bands are going to start touring again.
Oh yeah,
It's probably going to be weird when you're actually on stage in front of people again, isn't it?
It is going to be strange. We do have some gigs coming up within the next couple of months. We're all kind of taking this kind of gingerly, I guess. I'm not jumping back into doing 120 gigs a year right now. That just doesn't seem to be the safe thing to do. So I'm not sure what the number is going to be at the end of the year. It will probably be about 1/3 of that, is what I'm guessing. But yeah, when you know, the last real gig that I did a live stream gig with Crack the Sky up in Pennsylvania. And it was just us and a handful of staffers, cameramen in the room. And that was it. And you're up there giving it your all. And at the end, you hear crickets, you know, because, you know, it's like, you know, the guy who's sweeping the floor is clapping, but you know that you're being seen, you know, all over. But yeah, so when gigs come back, when they really come back, it is going to be very strange. That's for sure. But I think we'll all step right back into it.
And the funny part is I'm going to make a cheap little joke. There's some independent wrestling companies that probably don't even know that COVID's happening, because what you just said, with you hear like one person just clapping. Like, there's been shows I've went to where the people were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to draw huge. We're going to draw huge." You know, we sit there, we go out for a match, and you're like, there's 5 motherfucking people here. Like,
when we did the show at the school last month, I was like, well, this isn't as bad as some shows we've done.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. And, you know, so just me being the wrestler and, you know, kind of taking little jabs at certain promoters. But no, I mean, that's the thing.
Will not be named.
Yeah. But no, and you mentioned something about doing some stuff for some TV shows. You mind saying what TV shows that those were?
Yeah. So I gotta remember the names of them. So one of them is called Pit Bulls and Parolees.
Oh, I know that show. I know that show very well. Yeah.
Okay. Another one is called Life Below Zero.
I've heard about
people who choose to live up at the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
Another one is, there's some guy, he's like a survivalist. His name was like Bear Grylls or something.
Bear Grylls, yes.
Okay, Bear Grylls. Okay. He has a show he has a couple shows, and this is one of his shows.
Man vs. Wild was one of them, I believe.
This is a different one. I can't remember the name of this one. The way it works is when I write for a licensing company, and the licensing company basically sells music to TV networks. So they have a whole bunch of composers, of which I'm one, and they'll say, one of our clients needs a song that sounds like this, and they'll say they used to tell you, like, they'd say, make it have the the aggression of Metallica with the emotion of Good Charlotte, or something, some bizarre incongruous mixture of things, right? Literally, it would be that weird. They'd say something like, give it the, you know, the vocals of Bjork with the guitar of James Taylor, or something completely out of left field, and you'd have to figure out what that meant. Now what they do is they give you emotions. They'll say, we need something that's inspiring. We need something that is triumphant. We need something that is sad, melancholy. And then they might say, we want it to be just piano. We want it to be just synthy, atmospheric, ambient stuff. And you have to compose something that fits that parameter. And if the licensing company accepts it, then it goes on to the client. And hopefully the client buys it and that they choose to license it. And then it can be anywhere from 6 months to a year later that it shows up in the TV show.
Okay, that's good shit. That's good shit. And Pitbulls and Parolees, me and my wife, you know, we're dog lovers, so we watch that all the time. So when you said
Cool.
Parolees, I'm like, oh man, I know exactly about that. And of course, Dave, you've been around for a long time. You've been doing music.
Yes, I'm very old. Yes.
You know, you're part of Crack the Sky. You know, when we started promoting, everybody's like, oh, Dave, you know, Crack the Sky, Crack the Sky.
Well, you joined Crack the Sky in 2009, was it?
I'm sorry?
When did you join Crack the Sky?
You know what? My 10-year anniversary in Crack the Sky was St. Patty's Day a couple weeks ago. Okay. So it was 2011. Yeah.
What was, obviously they've been around for a long time. What was it joining such a, you know, such a established, almost you could say legendary band that late in the game? Was it weird? Did you just fit right in? How did it work?
You know, whether I fit in, you have to ask the guys whether I fit in. I don't know if I fit in or not. I still wonder if I fit in.
Yeah.
It was weird, but it was obviously a good weird, because I grew up listening to the band, and I was aware of Crack the Sky starting in like 7th grade. And I had no idea that they were from here. You just think that they're a big band like Led Zeppelin or you know, whatever. Yeah. And so I've told this story a bunch of times, but if you had told me back then that you're going to be in that band someday, I'd be like, come on, man, that's not how many people would have to die and before I would get in that gig? Thankfully, no one has died. No one had to die.
Left real quick.
I mean, like, you know, I'm not going to say that there wasn't a couple of, you know, that some Band-Aids weren't used somewhere along the way, but nobody died. And it just happened to work out that, I end up in the band. And it's been a real blessing. You know, we just put out a new album in January, and we're already starting to work on a new album. The album we just put out is called Tribes, and it's doing really well. We put out a double vinyl, double disc vinyl of it, and that's been selling really well, and people are really digging it. And we are now recording what is going to be our first ever all acoustic album. So that'll be out hopefully this summer.
And early on, where did you find yourself early on? What were the early days like for Dave DeMarco playing bass and getting into music?
You know, the early days were just like pretty much everybody else's story. I was in high school, and I went to, you know, Peabody in Baltimore. It's a music school. I went to Peabody while I was also in high school. So I was getting music lessons and all that. I was in a bunch of bands, and, you know, like anybody else, you play wherever you play when you're a kid, parties and little things here and there. I went off to college to do music school, and then lived in Boston for 10 years, came back here. And instead of getting into bands, I got into session work. And so the first several years, I was just being a studio rat. I was just going from studio to studio, playing on whatever it was that they needed. And then I ended up putting a band together with some of the guys that were in that studio scene. We put out a band together. And from there, that's when I started to get some visibility, I guess you would say, in the scene. And you know how it is, you migrate from one band to the other. And so I went full time with music, I guess, what was it, 2001? Yeah, in July, it'll be 20 years that I've been a full-time musician. Before, I had a day job, and I was just gigging in bands and using the day job to supplement what I wanted to do, which was be a full-timer. And so for the last 20 years, I've been gigging in a variety of cover bands, original bands. You know, been signed. Crack the Sky's now on our second record deal since I've been in the band. We've got a really supportive label behind us now. They reissued almost our entire back catalog of CDs. They're doing some really neat compilation discs that are going to be coming out. So it's a good place to be. That's all I can say.
I'm gonna say, speaking of the old Crack the Sky, I was excited to do this interview because any of the local people know the old record tape traders in Dundalk, which is
Oh
gone.
yeah.
I remember hearing Hot Rangers in My Heart on 98 Rock in like 1996. And being like, I got to get this album. I went to record and tape traders and I got the greatest hits. And I still have it to this day.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And of course, Dave, you kind of traveled around a little bit, as you said. You've done some cover bands and all that. And, you know, you're a part of Petticoat Junction, you know, with Kirk McEwen from 98 Rock. We just had his co-host, Marianne. We had her on a couple of weeks ago. Cool. And also you were part of Several Species.
Correct.
Floyd experience.
Yes.
How was that? Like, just Several Species. Like, I haven't seen them myself, but I have seen a lot of video and have heard their stuff. They're amazing. They're amazing. How was working with Several Species?
Thanks. And yeah, that was super cool. I mean, I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, and I knew the bass player. I knew the outgoing bass player. And when I heard that he was leaving, I called him up and I said, "Can I get in?" And he said, "Sure." So joined the band, and you know, that band already had such a huge track record. They were already playing, you know, it's a big band. It's an 11-piece band. You can't just put this band in, you can't, you know, even like a local place like McAvoy's, you can't put that band in there. It's too big. So it was always the Record Theater. It was always Pier 6 and a handful of other places, which is why we don't really play in the area that often. There's just not that many stages that can accommodate with the quadraphonic sound and the laser and the inflatable pig and the all the crap that we have, you know, you just can't. So, but getting into a band like that, to answer your question, what was it like? You know, you come into this band, and I'll never forget the first gig, and I'm standing there and we're doing sound check and we're checking everything. And I'm supposed to be paying attention to the song we're playing, but I'm like, wow, look at that laser. Oh, dude, cool. Check that out. Wow. And they're like, Dave, pay attention. But I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It was like being at a Pink Floyd concert. If you know, I saw Floyd back in '88 in Massachusetts in this giant stadium. And this is it, you know, slightly smaller scale, but this is essentially it. It's the same, the big circular screen, the whole thing. So getting up there, it's super fun to put on. That's why I love tribute bands. I love playing in tribute bands because you get to be, even if I'm not being Roger Waters, but I get to be in, I pretend I'm in Pink Floyd for 3 hours every night. Yeah. And you go back to back to back, one great song after another, the deep cuts, the hits, everything, the surprise songs that no one's going to know you're going to play, all that. Very, very entertaining. So the short answer is it's super cool.
Now, speaking of all these different gigs and different bands you play with, me and Ray know as wrestlers, some shows turn out great, some not so much. Yeah. So has there ever been one particular show, whether it was the crowd or, you know, technical problems? I'm sure there's been at least one show that just everything went wrong and you want to forget it ever happened. Can you give us an example of the worst? Yeah.
Well, when those happen, I have, like, as a friend of mine called, he saw it, what did he call it? Random erase memory. He called it that. I don't remember the bad things when they happen. They go completely out of my head. So whenever people ask me, tell me some horror story, I have a real hard time pulling one out. But as soon as you started saying that, one came to mind. So about 20 years ago, I was in another band with Kirk McEwen. It was called Kirk's Money Brothers. Okay. And we were playing like the Towson Town Festival or something like that, big stage and all this. And they had been talking about a bad storm that was going to happen that day, but it was kind of hit or miss. They weren't going to cancel it. They didn't know. Well, we're playing, and I mean, and the whole back of the stage behind you, it's wide open, right? And the wind starts to pick up, you know, and I'm going, guys, we need to get out of here. And they're like, no, man, you know, Kirk's like, no, man, we're doing this, you know. I'm like, Greg, we got to get out. And it's like, no, man, come on, you know, muscle through it, you know, suck it up, buttercup, you know. And the clouds are getting dark, the wind's picking up, and then all of a sudden, man, out of nowhere, this one wind gust came, and I mean, it was like a typhoon. Whoosh! It leveled everything on the stage with the exception of my bass rig, which at the time, the rig that I was using, that I now use with Several Species, this big, huge monster refrigerator of a bass amp that you could not knock over no matter what. That was the only thing that stayed. Drums, guitars, everything leveled on stage, right? And I look at the guys, I'm like, you think now we need to call this shit? Yeah. Right? So everybody, they run off the stage and they go hide in their cars. And all I'm thinking is I'm seeing thousands of dollars worth of valuable guitars all over the stage. So I'm up there in this horrible pouring rain. I'm getting everybody's guitars and putting them in the cases, and my own guitars as well. Getting everything situated and getting my gear, battened down and putting the cases on it and doing all this stuff. And that was horrible. My gear was drenched. And I had another gig with another band that night. I had to take my gear back to my house, dry it off, get different guitars, and then go to this other gig later that night. That's probably the worst gig that I remember.
And fortunate enough, like us being wrestlers, I've done myself outdoor shows, and we've been fortunate enough, at least I have, I don't know about you, there's been times where it looks like that storm was going to hammer down, but I never ever had to do a show in a storm. I've had to do shows where it was like 100 degrees outside and the canvas felt like, Satan's lava coming up out of the ground.
There was a House of Pain show we did out there one time. I don't think you were there, Ray, but I was the main event. It was a 4-way for the title, and the storm was approaching. You could see it in the distance. Yeah. So we're main events. We're supposed to go like 10, 12. And comes up, she's like, you guys got 3 minutes. And we went like 3.5, and then it just fucking poured. But it was perfect. It was perfect timing. We hit the finish, 1, 2, 3. Nice. And then everybody just took off.
Yeah. So, and Dave, now with everything, is there any specific venues that stand out to you? And I'm gonna it's gonna be kind of a double question. Any specific venues that you love playing at? But also, are there any venues where you sit there and like just every single time you play there, something goes wrong, or bad experience, or just in general?
Like I said, I'm gonna have a hard time recalling the bad stuff because that stuff just doesn't stick. But I'll tell you two of my favorites. These are going to be large scale, medium scale.
Okay.
Large scale is Pier 6.
Okay.
That's it's a real venue. That's the kind of venue you want to play. Since you're a kid, it holds 4,000 people. It's outside. It's kind of like a Merriweather-ish kind of thing. And for people of my age, you grew up and you said that was a local place that you aspired to play, was Merriweather, which I did get to play about 10 years ago. But Pier 6, I've done that a bunch of times now. And it's just, it's a pro place, man. The sound's great. Everybody who works there, from the whole top down, it's a very well done organization, and every show feels like that's the show you want it to feel that way. Yeah. On a medium scale, there's a place up in Harford County called Club 66.
Okay.
And it's a private place. It holds about 350 people. It's very rustic. It's kind of set up like an old lodge.
Okay.
And Crack the Sky has always used that place as kind of a warm-up room where we would play that on a Friday and then play Pier 6 on Saturday.
Gotcha.
Or play somewhere else. But they have bands. Prior to COVID, they were having bands there all the time. But again, very well run. It's playing there is like the owners, Dave and Cheryl, are super, super wonderful people who have been part of the Crack the Sky family forever. They take care of every band that goes in there, and that's a big piece of it. When everybody from the sound man to the owner to the whoever's involved, when they all get it and they're into the full experience, they're not just there, they're not counting heads, they're not. Obviously, there are things you have to do on the business side, but we've all done these rooms where the quality of the show, you can tell from the top down, didn't matter to anybody. It was all just about counting heads and how many and what the ring was at the register and all that. And Club 66 isn't like that. It's a family kind of place, and you have to be. They have members who attend that place, but the outsiders can come in also. It's one of those places that when I know there's a Club 66 gig on the book, you kind of get this warm feeling in your stomach, and you go, "This is going to be a nice night."
And with everything, actually, reminding everybody, we are on Facebook Live. We do come live on Facebook a week early with all of our guests for all of you to be able to interact and join us live. And one of our good friends, Playboy Bobby Starr, who was in WCW, he commented, he said, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And he remembers that storm that you were talking about. He said,
"Yes, yeah, Bob's at every local rock show ever."
Yeah. So he shows up, he takes pictures. You know, I think it was Starstruck Photography or something like that. He had Shooting Star Photography, and he would show up and take pictures. And he's like, "Yeah, man, I remember that storm. You know, it was a monster." So it's crazy. And of course our friend Mike Walters, he said Club 66 is in Edgewood. Is that?
Yes, that is it. Yeah.
He said awesome place. Dave Rude is the man.
Dave Rohde, he's God. I can't say enough good things about Dave and his wife Cheryl. Man, if every club owner had the ethos, that he has, life would be so. For those of us who gig and for those of us who go from room to room, whether it's on a local basis or on a national basis, man, they should. You know, like what was that show? There was a TV show that was on for a while. It was called like Bar Rehab or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Where some guy would come in as a consultant and say, "Hey, if you want to ever have a bar, here's do it like this, and this." Yeah. Dave Rohde could tour the country and be Club Rehab and say, "You want to be a successful music venue, do this, and this." And every band that plays would have a much happier life.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
Like, need more guys like that in the business.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And I noticed you also earlier when you were talking, you brought up Record Theater.
Yeah.
They just got revamped.
Yes.
So have there been any talks for you to be a part of, you know, whichever band to go do anything at Record Theater? Because I know they're starting to do live shows there. And Record, like I remember Record, I saw Five Finger Death Punch there. When they were just starting off. I don't remember the concert. I don't remember any of it because I was just blitzed. But I remember going there to see Five Finger.
Felt like it was going to fall apart.
Yeah.
You know, before we get into one of the funniest things I read was someone who didn't like Five Finger Death Punch referred to them as 5 Flavor Fruit Punch. Actually, I thought that was hysterical.
Our buddy Mike used to make 5 Finger Death Punch. Like we would be at a party, he would make punch that he called 5 Finger Death Punch, and
man, was it a doozy?
Yeah,
that'll put you on your ass.
That's funny.
Man. Like we drank some of that, and then we just
after you drink some of that, it's gonna be hard to see.
And, you know, Record Theater from the photos.
I see what you did there.
Actually, it was funny. I brought up the story before. Record Theater, you always knew when you walked in, they had that big fish tank with that big fish in it.
Yep.
And I remember one night, me and my friend were asked to leave because one of the security guys comes walking around the corner, and we're drunk, and all he sees is just both of us with our arms in the fish thing. And he's like, "What are you doing?" We're like, "We want to pet fish." And he's like, "You guys need to go." So like there we are standing out front with our sleeves all wet, waiting for our friends to come outside because we were just asked to leave Record Theater because for some reason we wanted that fish.
Yep. Had to pet the fish. But yeah, so to answer your question, there's so Crack the Sky has a long history at Record Theater. So they reached out, and we do have a booking there that we're going to be announcing. It's for a couple months out.
Okay.
We'll be announcing that soon. Several Species also is a room, I think, and this was well before I was in the band, but they started out there, I think, playing there, and they would play like a whole weekend. So we have some things booked with that band as well that are, again, way down the road and will be announced at some point. So yep, and looking forward. I'm totally looking forward to being back in that place. I love what they've done with it.
Yeah, I was so excited when I heard they were coming back. And of course, a lot of people listening worldwide, of course, our fan base in the UK, we love you guys. Thank you for, you know, all the listens we get every single week. And also, you know, people from, you know, some of the other states, of course, they probably know who Crack the Sky is. They probably, you know Crack the Sky from their history. But I'm going to bring up a couple of places that, you know, I'm surprised aren't around anymore. Like that actually did pretty well. As we know, in Baltimore, everybody's talking about the return of Hammerjacks.
Yeah.
Hammerjacks is supposed to be coming back.
That's coming back. I don't even know.
They've been saying it for like 5 years now.
Well, apparently, like the building now says future home of Hammerjacks. It's right behind Raven Stadium.
By the casino.
Yeah. And so there's that. And then also there was Bourbon Street, Baltimore there for a while. And I don't think that building, it was right down, like right as you came off of 83. It just kind of sat there.
Yeah.
And that was open for a short period of time. And that was a pretty cool venue. There was
That was a Hammerjacks locate. That didn't they,
okay.
Didn't they? And I could be totally getting this wrong, because I think I played Bourbon Street, but I seem to remember that Hammerjacks, at least in name only, came back in the early 2000s. And I think it was literally in the same complex as that Bourbon Street place.
Yeah.
But when Hammerjacks came back, in fact, I know it did, because I played the grand opening that night. That's right. It was like an all-star band. It was me and Mickey Coachella and a couple of guys from Crushing Day and a handful of other people. And we all played the opening thing there. That's right. I totally forgot about that. Yeah. But that didn't last. It didn't have the vibe of Hammerjacks.
It was a flash in the pan. And what was it? I think, was it Sonar?
I was just going to mention, Ray. I missed
Sonar, yeah.
It was like the dirtiest, grimiest place.
Yeah.
It was like somewhere you go to see a punk rock show. I saw Phil Anselmo there twice. It was tremendous.
But some of those venues were the best, though. Like, you sat there and it's like, you look back and you see some of those venues and you're like, oh man. And one that
I will say this though, of all the venues I've been to, Sonar had the most disgusting bathroom by far.
And Dave, I'm sure you probably played here at some point. There was a place that was 5 minutes away from my house when I lived in Dundalk, and I knew I could walk home from there. So
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say the zoo.
The zoo slash the black hole. Like
black
I knew
hole, right.
it as the black hole. And the thing is we would always go up there because we were friends with all the bartenders.
I went to a death metal show there when I was 18 with a fake ID.
Yeah, we would go up there. We would go to the black hole. We would drink all night. And the bartenders that we knew, we'd drink all night. And then next thing you know, we just have like an $18 bar tab. Like, and it's like, oh, okay, this is cool.
That place was
whatever, and that place was insane as well. Like they also did raves every so often. And there was just one night I stumbled upon one of those. I'd never been to it was like one of those like weird, like, I guess you can consider it ecstasy type raves or some shit. And like, I walked in, I'm like, what is this?
I may have been to one or two of those in my time.
Yeah. But yeah, that place was cool. And then also, what was it? Was it I want to say Fletcher's.
Fletcher's, yeah.
They used to do Noise in the Basement live there. And I go past that building all the time. They still have a little sign out there. There's a different place there now. But every time you go by it, I'm like, man, that was Fletcher's. Like, it's crazy how you remember things. And it's like, that place will never be whatever it is to me. It'll always be Fletcher's. Yes. Whatever's going into the building of the black hole, it'll always be the black hole / the zoo to me. So, it's crazy. And Dave, is there any place that you can recall, Dave, where you used to play all the time and it's like, man, this was a great venue, and now it's just gone, and it's like, man, what the hell happened to this place?
God, I know I should have a handful of them at the tip of my tongue, and again, my random erase memory. No, the answer is yes. Do I remember what they are? No, they have gone away. God. Yeah.
The one for me would be Teamsters Hall.
Yes.
Because that was like the legendary wrestling venue in the 90s. Yeah. And of course I got to work, I don't think you ever did, but I got to work there. And now it's a church.
Yeah, well, that's crazy.
When I think of some of the things that happened in that building, the fact that it's a church now is kind of freaky.
Oh yeah. It's also what is it? I feel like a very underused venue also is the Patapsco Arena.
Yeah,
like not a lot of things going on at the Patapsco Arena either. No. And it's insane.
WWF used to run there back in the 90s.
Yeah, and what we're gonna do real quick for everybody listening at home, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna take a little break, we're gonna play a song or two from some of our previous guests that were on, and we
really should play a Crack the Sky song, let's be honest.
And we're gonna
get a word. This podcast doesn't have Hot Rangers in my heart, Ray, I'm gonna chop you.
And we're gonna get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. For those of you live, that's just our cut, so we can do that on the audio version. We're going to get right back into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Happy Hour podcast. This is Ray. Of course, I'm here with Mike. Psycrotes filling in I'm sorry, I'm here with Matt. I've had one beer too many. And Psycrotes is filling in for Mike.
That guy.
Yeah, fucking Mike doesn't even exist.
Yeah, Mike's never here. And of course, we're here with Dave DeMarco. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into our beer of the week. So our beer of the week, and actually this is our first beer that we've gotten from Sierra Nevada. It's called Kellerweiss.
Keller
Weiss, Keller Weiss,
Keller Weiss.
German, it's gotta be good.
And it's Bavarian style wheat. And it says our Bavarian style wheat beer is complex with flavors reminiscent of banana bread and spicy clove. This hazy golden beer glows with suspended yeast, creating a velvety texture and refreshing finish. I feel like a lot of these descriptions should be said by a male porn star before they get it on. Like some of these are
nice
you're just kind of, you're just kind of like, who thought of these? Like, what is this? So yeah,
we do know a certain male porn star that knows this one. So maybe we'll
we should give him random beer description labels and have him say them in his movies.
Since it's the beer of the week segment, Dave, what is your go-to drink? What is your go-to drink?
All right, so here's the disclaimer. I drink. You know how much I drink?
How much?
I mean, if I'm really like laying into it,
yeah,
I'm good for. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I'll do 1 to 2 beers every year.
Oh,
this man's a rock star.
And you know,
I'm a lush, man.
Yeah. And here's the thing, Psycrotes.
I just did that in an hour.
Psycrotes, he can't drink anymore. He has issues. And our other co-host Mike, he's been sober for about 2 years now. So
yeah,
we applaud him for that. We just the beer of the week type thing. It's just kind of like, hey, let's do something fun, and it's interesting trying different things. So
yeah, but I'll answer the question. If I were to have a beer, it would be Guinness. In my opinion, you just can't get any better than Guinness. Yeah. I do remember having had a few Sierra Nevadas way back in the day. They made one called Celebration Ale that I really liked a lot.
Nice.
Yeah. But
shout out to Sierra Nevada, everybody. And for those of you watching at home, that's what the bottle looks like. If you want to pick up some Keller West, that's what it looks like. And I like it. Yeah,
I do like it.
We've been hitting home runs lately. And Matt, this is it. Of course, it may be March 27th live time, but this is going to air in April. So that means one thing: we now have a new shot of the month. So
Jesus Christ.
our delicious,
what did you do now?
Our delicious Long Island iced tea shot that we had for the month of March is now deceased. We don't have that anymore. So our shot of the month for this month is Hartley VSOP, and it is 40% alcohol by volume, 80 proof brandy. So we are going to do ourselves some brandy. So ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That's the Hartley VSOP. So we're going to do ourselves a shot of Hartley VSOP, and that's going to be for you, Matt. And I know you're hating my guts right now, but in tradition, we're going to go ahead, crack this open, and everybody knows this isn't a gimmick. We drink on this show, and that's just
sounds like an indie work. Like an old Triple H Bluebird gimmick.
Yeah. Oh man, just by the way that pours, it sounds like it's going to be bad. Here, Matt, you go ahead and do that, because I've had so many instances where I've dropped it or.
Okay, you're good.
All right, cool.
And I understand the VSOP stands for very special old person. Is that it?
I have no idea. That might be it.
We're all old here.
Let me go ahead and put that on here, and we're gonna go ahead and
just got some
whiskey. Yeah. It's like, just go ahead and get this out here. So, all right. So here we go. There's that, and cheers to it.
I'll toast you with my water because I'm such a freaking rock star.
It's actually not too bad.
No,
that's actually not bad at all. I like it. So shout out to Hartley, and we're gonna be.
What is it? Is it a cognac? What is it? It's
a brandy.
Oh, brandy. Okay.
Yeah, brandy. So we're gonna be drinking that all throughout the month of April. So you're gonna be hearing a lot of it. Make sure you go out and pick some up. And
now it hit.
We'll be tagging Hartley and communicating with them on Twitter. Probably a lot of them reach back to us when we reach out to them. And what we're gonna do right now too is, on the second part of our show, we always get into our games. So we're gonna go ahead and start our Ode to Humanity segment. So Dave, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our 5-second rule. And we kind of went over the rules a little bit on the pre-show. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I have this little timer right here. It kind of looks like a weird dildo of some kind, but there's this timer
I'll be
here.
Using it later.
Yeah. There's this timer, and pretty much once I flip it, you have 5 seconds to give your answers. So what you want to do is you want to name 3 supermodels starting now.
Elle Macpherson, Cheryl Teagues, and what's her name?
Yeah. So those 2 are out. So it's going to go to Psycrotes. Okay. So Psycrotes, those 2 are out. 3 supermodels starting now.
Kate Upton, Giselle Bundchen, Cindy Crawford.
Oh, yeah, all right. Look at that. He's got it. That's the thing, though. Like we say this all the time. When you're on the spot for 5 seconds, it's hard to be like bam, bam,
To be
bam,
fair,
bam,
before the
bam,
show,
bam.
we did.
Yeah.
You told me what it was. So I got it unfair.
Yeah, of course.
I was like, Tom
But you
Brady's
know what?
wife?
I always know what they are, but I still sometimes cannot process in 5 seconds what it is.
Right,
Like,
see,
yeah.
if they would have said 3 porn stars,
I'd
have been like,
now would have been like, oh, yeah.
I mean, we got on the podcast.
And then what we're going to do too is we're going to get into our segment called Incoherent. So let me go ahead. I'm going to pin myself there. So Dave, do you see just us on the screen right now? It's
yes.
both of us. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and hold up this card. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
And then what you want to do is you want to try to sound that out as if you were, it's basically in drunk lingo, and you want to try to figure out what it says. And we can give you 2 hints as well. So
Bogs do I'm, Bogs do I'm, Bogs do I'm, Bogs do I am, Bogs do I am, Bogs do I am, Bogs do I am, Bogs do I am. Okay, I need hints.
All right. So the first hint is Franzia or Franza.
What the hell does that mean?
What is that?
Bogs do I, Bogs do him, Bogs do I'm. All right, let me. Bogs do I'm. Bogs do I'm. Bogs do I'm.
You're getting there. You're getting there.
Bogs do I'm. Bogs do I'm. Bogs do I'm.
I'm going to give you another hint. Another hint is cheap, but it gets the job done.
Oh, she always does.
I've known a few girls like that.
Bogs do I'm. I have no idea. I'm done. I give up.
Boxed wine.
What?
Yeah, boxed wine. Like, you ever see the Franza? It's basically
Boxed wine.
Son of a
Boxed
bitch.
wine.
And when
You had it,
yeah.
dude. When you were saying that and you said really drunk, I was like, he's gonna get that. You were so close.
Yeah, you were this close. I'm like, he's saying it. He's saying it. He's saying
Bogs
it.
do I'm. That's funny. That is funny.
And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the Cards Against Humanity. And Matt, I'll go ahead and let you read these off. And Dave,
Hey, hold on. You got to do more than one of everything. Because now that I'm getting it, I'm like, all right, let me try another one. You got to do more than one. I know you have a schedule. You got.
And what we're going to do is Matt's going to read off the black card. Then he's going to give you 4 options. And you choose which one you think is the best option and answers the card that he's going to read off.
All right. So just think Scooby-Doo when they catch the bad guy. Okay.
Okay.
Because I may botch this. And I would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't for you, when they say meddling kids.
And I would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for blank. You all right there, man?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
And so here's the options.
Enormous Scandinavian woman. Child abuse. Right.
They're randomly drawn.
The worm that ate my penis and is now my penis. Rush. Hold on. Rest his soul. Rush Limbaugh's soft, shitty body.
That's a timely reference.
I'm going to go with enormous Scandinavian women.
Nice. And if I were to say that, I think I would choose the worm that had ate my penis that is now my penis. And I would have gotten away. So Dave says I would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for enormous Scandinavian women.
For me, it was a toss-up between the worm penis and Rush Limbaugh. That's the only time that sentence has ever been uttered on a podcast.
Yeah, that's the only time it's ever been saying enormous. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Rush Limbaugh.
So pretty
And
much
your
that's our
shitty body.
Ode to Humanity segment. And Dave, you've done a lot of shows. You've been around a lot of crowds. What do you think the craziest, wildest crowds, like at any particular venue or that you can remember that you've played in front of that have just been fire the whole time you guys have been on stage?
God, that is really tough. I'd have to say, going back to Club 66, Crack the Sky at Club 66, because it's one of these places where they're right up against the stage and they come there ready for a show. And I'll go back to Pier 6 also. The crowds are always really, really insane there. But I'll give you one on the smaller scale as well. There's a place that I play with my little trio called Dave DeMarco Band, and we play this place called the Firehouse, which is up in Parkville or Kearney. And we always get a really, really super great crowd there as well. Where the people they come there, no one's looking at their phone, no one's BSing. They come there to hear a band rock out. So those would be my three.
And has there ever been a time where you've seen someone, you're just sitting there playing and you just see that drunk guy? That guy that's just so obliterated that you're sitting there playing and you're like, that guy's about to have a rough night.
Oh yeah. And you see, if he happens to be there, if that guy happens to be there at a DDB show, he's going to have an even rougher night, because I don't suffer those guys too well, man. Yeah. If they get really drunk and they get stupid, they become the show.
Yeah.
And we've had some interesting nights where I put all the attention on them. I want to make sure that if you came out tonight to get drunk and that's what then I'm going to make the show about you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of comedians do that too.
I've seen that at a Megadeth show in front of 10,000 people. Dave Mustaine just started ripping this guy a new asshole. It was tremendous.
Yeah,
that's Dave. That's Mustaine.
And aside from Maryland, now Crack the Sky, you guys are known all over the place. Aside from Maryland, I'm sure you've traveled around different places. Are there any, cities, states, any other places where you like playing, you like being able to go to that location to play where you've played before?
Playing at any show that you do in New York City is always, it has a kind of a magical vibe to it. And so I'm always going to say something in New York that's going to be fun. I remember, I think it was like, might have been 2 years ago, I think we played up in Buffalo, and a whole bunch of Canadians came down because Crack the Sky had not been to that area since the early 80s or something like that. So you had all these really diehard Canadian Crack the Sky fans who hadn't seen the band in 40 years. Nice. And so they all they came across the border and invaded this poor place in Buffalo. And awesome. You want to talk about just some of the nicest people that we have ever met. Yeah. They felt like they treated to them, it was like we were giving them a gift of coming up there to play for them. They just, as much as I love my Maryland people and the Baltimore hometown crowd, and I do, but these folks from up there, they were just, you could not have asked for nicer folks. Oh yeah. Just perfect night.
Fans in other countries, whether it's wrestling, music, comedy, whatever, are just a whole different level.
South America for rock and metal.
Yeah, they go to these shows and they feel honored of having these people play for them. We're from a world, with pro wrestling where people criticize it every night. Oh well, why are they putting this guy over? Why are they putting that guy over? Wrestling fans are the biggest, I hate saying it, wrestling fans are the biggest crybabies on the face of the planet. They're never happy. And it's look, guys, just we're all going out here. We're putting our lives, souls, everything on the line for you guys to come out and have a good time. I never went out and wrestled once for myself. Why did I want to get out there and have the shit beaten out of me night in, night out? For me, I don't want to do that. No, you get that connection with the fans. You hold the fans in the palm of your hand. And if you tell them, hey, F you, and they have a reaction and you're a bad guy, hey, you did your job. That guy's enjoying the show. He's getting a part of that show, but I've heard from guys who have wrestled in, Canada, Mexico, other places, that it's just a whole complete different level in other countries. And we were talking a little bit on the pre-show about some of the stuff you did. You said you pre-record a lot of stuff and, send it out. And you were talking about some stuff that you did for somebody in Croatia. Right. How does a lot of that stuff work? What other countries have you, done stuff for? Have you, just made random music for and sent out to?
So I got hired to play on a record by this guy from Australia. I've actually done 2 records with him, and his stuff I would liken to Chevelle, if you know that band, modern heavy band. He's young, early 20s, but he's this great guitar player, and he needed a bass player, and he hired me to play on his stuff. He sent me everything except the bass. We had some conversations about what style and what tone he was looking for, and I put him on, send it out. I've done a couple of records for folks in the UK. I did some stuff for a gal in Germany who's kind of like a 80s metal kind of guy, or a gal rather, like a Doro Pesh. I don't know if you know who she is. I'm trying to think who else. There was Oh, this guy in Scotland, yeah, who did like traditional Scottish music. Did a song for a band in Brazil that was kind of metally. You know, and the one thing that ties them all together, they love music. They take it, and this is in no way a slag against anyone in America. It's not. But my perception is that everyone who I've had the pleasure of recording with, who's been from another country, they kind of just they bleed it a little more than most of the American artists that I've gotten to work with. Yeah. There's like a casual atmosphere about a lot of a lot of Americans take about their music, and maybe it's because they're Here's a great example. There was a gal that I played with for a while. I don't know if you're going to remember this. There was a Swedish metal band, all female. They're called Drain STH. They were like an Ozfest band, and they were big on 98 Rock for a couple of years. Very heavy, like a heavier Alice in Chains. And I instantly became a fan of them. I just thought they were fantastic. They could play, they could sing, they were great. Well, I ended up being after that band broke up, I ended up being in a band with the guitar player, a gal named Flavia Cannell. This is up in New York. And she told me the stories of what they did. Everybody in that band went on like public assistance over in Stockholm, not because they didn't want to work, but because to work would be to water down the experience of what they were trying to do with their music. They didn't want to have anything to fall back on. They wanted, it was a pure thing for them. It was music or die. They lived in absolute abject poverty until things started to happen for them and they got signed and made their career. And that experience, the guys in Typo Negative, same thing.
Yeah.
You know, those guys had some menial jobs, but it was all about the band. Yeah. And you know, whether you're going to say that that's part of a bygone era, I mean, rock is not exactly at its apex right now. You know, there are other styles of music that are, I think, a little more in the public consciousness right now than good old rock and roll. But that's just something that I see is that you know, Europeans or South Americans, they bleed this music.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like the Grammys and the MTV Music Awards, you know, all that. When they have a rock category, I sit there and I look, I'm like, that shit is not rock. Right. I don't know what this is that they have for this category, but that shit is not rock. Yeah. That they have as a rock category. And I'm like, this is just
and that
crazy.
Was going to be my question for you, but you kind of just answered it. Yeah. Like the direction that good old rock and roll is now is just, I wouldn't say rock is dead. It's not dead, but it's just no one has the heart, the bleeding heart kind of like anymore. No one has that attitude no more.
Yeah. And it's not dead. It just kind of smells funny.
Yeah. Well, also you look at it that like now everybody is a rock star. Like that's the thing. Everybody's a rock star. Like, you know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they're now letting other, you know, genres into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is fine. But really, at that point, it just becomes kind of like a music hall.
And it's also like
instead of a rock and roll hall.
Do it now. If you've got a phone and you go on YouTube, you can make your own music.
Yeah.
And to me, that makes it feel. I mean, that's cool, but it also makes it feel a little less special.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I was growing up, you know, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all the stuff we got now. You didn't really know everything about the artists. Like, obviously, you knew who Metallica were, but you didn't know everything about the personal lives. And now it's just everything is so out in the open that it's kind of lost a little bit of the magic.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. When I was a kid, this is, you know, just the years just before MTV, you very rarely got to see a band or an artist on TV. There were a handful of shows that we would do something, but a lot of times they were lip syncing. And I remember the very first time that I saw AC/DC performing live, and it was lip synced. They were totally lip syncing, but I was seeing them actually move. Yeah. And it was like, wow, this is a real rock and roll band. And I was a kid, right? And then now, the magic of that is gone, because you name the band, go on YouTube, and you've got a playlist filled of 1,000 different things. So to see them live is no big deal. That's why music magazines when I was a kid was such a big deal, because at least you could read something about them that was bigger than a paragraph long, and you could see some pictures of them and something, and that really contributed to the mystique of being in a band. Yeah. And now there is no mystique, because everyone can do it. Everyone does do it. And yeah, it's just so commonplace. Everybody looks the same. Everybody talks the same. They got the same clothes from the same store in the mall. And it's
and Psycrotes knows where I'm going to go with this. You totally named off what I feel about pro wrestling today.
Yep.
Like, pro wrestling is so like, it's the kind of thing that, people can get it everywhere. It's literally everywhere. There's so many different companies, so many different indie companies. Way back in the day, in the 80s, you had the territories.
And everybody was a character.
Yeah, everybody was a character.
Now
everybody was different.
Yeah.
Now everybody's the same.
Yeah.
Like, there's no character develop. And God forbid if you try to do a character like back in the 80s, like what they're doing with the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Everybody's like, oh well, why does he look burned? Because he was fucking set on fire 3 months ago. That's why. Like, that's why he came back looking like he was set on fire. Like, it makes sense. But I mean, I feel the same way with the wrestling business, but also I feel, with watching wrestling on TV, and it's the same thing with music, listening to it on the radio, there's a much different element seeing it live. Everything is a lot better live. Like, I'm a huge baseball fan. Watching the Orioles on TV is 100% different than going to Camden Yards and seeing them play in that stadium.
Without a doubt.
Feel it. In the stadium, and just the atmosphere and the electricity, the energy that's in the sky, and that's the whole thing. And dude, I agree 100%. And I feel like as time goes on, it's going to get worse and worse. And COVID didn't do anything a lot of favors.
COVID just exasperated the whole thing.
Fortunately for the music industry, they don't have an athletic commission. In Maryland, wrestling, we have a state athletic commission. And, pretty much they regulate pro wrestling, but really we kind of call them crooks because we pay them a bunch of money. Everybody has to pay to get licensed, do all this stuff. They tell us what we can and can't do. They get half of whatever the gate is. And then that's it. And it's like, okay, well, why are we doing this? Like, we're losing half of our money. But the commission now is like, oh, well, you need to be vaccinated. You need to have COVID tests every show. And it's like, what goddamn independent promoter is going to try to do that kind of stuff? Like, they're going to be ridiculous. Wow. So, in Maryland, we're kind of on the fence of what's going to happen with pro wrestling in the state. A lot of companies are already looking into West Virginia, Pennsylvania, all that to be able to run shows, or they're running them at their schools and doing no fan tapings, but nothing beats being able to go out there and, perform in front of a live crowd, whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people.
There's been bands that I liked, but it wasn't until I saw them live that I loved them.
Yeah.
Like a good example is the Amity Affliction. They're my favorite band. I liked them for years. It wasn't until I saw them live and just the energy of the whole show, I was like, oh my God, I'm instantly their number one fan now. It was just such an amazing show that I'll never forget.
Yeah. And there's a fan, Stephen Carvin. He said, hey Dave. So he's just checking.
Hey Steve. All right.
But yeah, I mean, everybody watching on Facebook Live, of course, we probably have another about 10 minutes or so. So if you have any questions for Dave, if you're at home, if you have any questions for us, Dave, feel free to ask them. And I mean, Dave, you're in so many things. You have Crack the Sky, you have the Dave DeMarco band. What's coming up with you? What can we expect in the future from you, sir? With the way everything's going, everything's starting to open back up. What all do you have?
Well, and this will dovetail into what we were just talking about how people feel and their attitudes about things. I think that the one possibly good thing that comes out of COVID, and it's, you feel horrible saying that something good could have come out of something that killed millions of people, right? And I'm gonna be super, super specific and say, yeah, well, gee whiz, but the good thing is there is no good thing. 1 million people, how many million people have died? There is nothing good, but at least one small thing is that those of us who play, we speculate. And we, based on things that you see on Facebook and the fans that you talk to, that maybe once things open up, people will be a little more, I hate to say this because we do have some extremely appreciative fans, we really do, but maybe people will remember what was sacred about going to see a live show. Everything that you just said about baseball and about wrestling applies to music as well. And that maybe you won't see the people who were going, this is a classic joke that we have in our little industry. People, I love the band, I totally support the band, I've been with the band for years, I'm #1 fan, can you put me on the guest list?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. If you support the band and you want to see them do well, you buy a ticket. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we're thinking is that maybe when all this comes back, people will be really just so appreciative and so anxious to get back out and experience the live music thing again, that maybe that attitude will start to wane, and we won't see as much of that. You won't see as many people treating it like, I'm not going to go see him tonight. We'll just go see him next week or something like that. I'll go bowling tonight or wherever they choose to put their $10, whatever. So maybe it'll go back to being a special thing. What I don't necessarily know if I see that happening for a younger crowd, but for the older crowd that maybe got a little jaded, and it's a little harder to do things. Let's face it, when you're a little older and I got it, well, the show starts at what time? I'm gonna get home at what time? Gee whiz, like maybe it'll become more of a sacred thing for them. So that being said, the shows, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, just me. The shows that I think I'm going to end up doing this year, based on what's kind of falling onto the calendar, I think they're going to be real special events, and I think they're going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a time to reconnect with fans who we haven't seen in a year, in person anyway. I plan on doing more live stream events. That's another thing that I did that helped sustain me this year, was I would do these live stream events where I would play bass while people requested songs, and I would just pull up the song and play along. And people were really nice. They would send in tips and donations and all this. I did music trivia online like this, where I'd have a live stream thing. I did Q&A sessions where I got to have the kind of conversations with fans that I never get to have at a bar, because it's too loud. There's too many distractions, too many people talking, and I could really interface with the fans on a very personal level. So I plan to do more of that for sure. I've been putting out a lot more YouTube content and Instagram content in terms of bass play-alongs and instructional type stuff. I'm absolutely keeping that going. And I've got tons of session work. There's 3 albums I'm working on right now. The Crack the Sky record that I mentioned, and 2 other records. And so I'm going to be here. The short answer is, this room that I'm in, I'm going to be right here, sitting in this chair, creating music. And that's the blessing.
Yeah. And of course,
you said we can expect this Crack the Sky acoustic album sometime in the summer.
That's the plan. Yeah. The label is going to be putting out another compilation album of some neat stuff that I'm not sure whether the compilation album's coming first or the new Crack the Sky. I mean, our last album just came out in January, so it's still considered a new album. So, who knows when this new album will come out, but I hope maybe by the end of the summer. And between then and now, I'm going to have a couple other albums with some of the other projects I've played in. They'll be released, and as I'm going to keep playing, as long as people keep wanting me to play on their albums or their songs, I'm going to keep cranking out. So
it's kind of like, I'm going to be here no matter if you like it or not. If there's one person here or no people, I'm going to be up there playing bass, and that's the way it's going to be. And
exactly.
Where can everybody find you, Dave, if they want to reach out to you? And I mean, that's the benefit with social media. When used right, you can really connect with the fans. I have fans that have been fans of mine since I started wrestling and pro wrestling 20 years ago, that have followed over to the podcast, that have subscribed to the Patreon. It's just crazy. But where can everybody find you, to see all of your music? Anybody that might be hearing about you for the first time, hear about Crack the Sky, Dave DeMarco Band for the first time, where can everybody find you?
The easiest way is to find me on Facebook, because everybody's on Facebook. Just type, it's facebook.com/Dave DeMarco. That's the easiest way. I have a bunch of different websites for it. There's davedemarco.com. If you want to see the bands if you want to talk to me about recording and have me on your album, yoursessionbassist.com, because that's what I want to be. I want to be your session bassist. For the lessons, for the bass lessons, I have beyondbasslessons.com. But if you want to bypass all that, just find me on Facebook. That's where I do most of my hanging out and posting stuff. I have an Instagram as well. I think it's Dave DeMarco Bass. So I'm easy to find if you're looking for me.
And Dave, we appreciate it. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to say next week we will be back. We will be back on Facebook Live. For those of you listening at home,
real quick, one question I did want to ask that I forgot.
No problem.
Dave, favorite song to play live with Crack the Sky?
Yeah. Currently, I would say it's a song. It's kind of a deep track. It's called Mind Baby. It's off the first album. Okay. However, I think that's going to change once we start gigging, because we're going to obviously play things from the new album Tribes. We have a song on there called Quick, and it's it's just a straight, fastball down the middle kind of rock tune. And the end of it has a very typical Crack the Sky kind of outro where we jam and it gets dual guitar solos and all this, and it builds in intensity. I think that is going to be our Comfortably Numb. Sure. Once we start playing that has been the song that has gotten the most positive response from the new album. Even though it was not released as it wasn't released as a single. We released 3 other songs and that wasn't one of them. But yet everybody went to this song quick and said, that's my favorite song. I think that song is going to become like one of our epic songs. I'm really looking forward to doing that one live.
Awesome. And we will be back next week with Josie Marcinello. She's a cosplayer, local cosplayer. So yeah, like she dresses up, does all kinds of the cosplaying conventions, Comic-Con, Otakon, all that fun stuff. And of course, everybody.
BronyCon? Does she do BronyCon?
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to ask her.
And of course, Dave joined us, a half an hour early on our Patreon. Everybody get out, subscribe to the Patreon. We get a lot of exclusive stuff. Dave showed us some of his guitars, some of his memorabilia that he has in his studio. It's only $3 a month. Subscribe. All of our merchandise is available over on www.thehhpod.com. Please subscribe, buy some stuff. We don't make any money off this.
OnlyFans, where you can see the high priest.
And Dave, we appreciate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We will see everybody next week. Dave, can you hang out for 1 second?
You betcha.
Awesome. All right. So Dave, we're no longer on Facebook Live. Would you just be able to real quick say, hey, this is Dave DeMarco from Crack the Sky and the Dave DeMarco Band, and you're listening to the Happy Hour podcast?
Sure. Yep.
Awesome. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, this is Dave DeMarco from Crack the Sky and the Dave DeMarco Band, and you're listening to the Happy Hour podcast.
Cool. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Hope you had a good time.
Yes, I did. This was a lot of fun, and this was so different from the other ones that I do. So I really, really like it. You guys have a great format that you're doing here, and thanks, Ray, for sticking with the, all the stuff and the BS and yeah. But I appreciate you guys having me on. This was good.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, dude, it was fun, and I mean that's the thing. Like as I said, we were pro wrestlers. I literally only made notes of the bands you were in, because I have that whole mentality of when we do a wrestling show, you got to call it in the ring. Like you got to know where to go and navigate yourself through, because you forget something, you're like a deer in headlights. One mistake feeds off of another mistake. So me, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm a talker. I know how to present myself. Like a lot of times, like Matt hasn't done anything like this before. Our other host, Mike, he hasn't done anything like this before, but they know that I can just navigate us through if something goes wrong, so that's just the whole thing. It's been fun. We started doing this in June. Numbers aren't anything to write home about. They're getting good. Like we have right now, out of all the episodes we've done since June, we're close to probably 5-6K just on audio. And the YouTube's picking up, the Facebook Live's picking up. So, COVID was kind of a blessing in disguise, because we were going to do this a little bit later on, but then COVID happened. We're like, well, we have nothing else better to do, so let's just go ahead and do the podcast. We can Zoom with people. They don't have a lot going on,
Right.
This is ideal. So,
well, that's awesome. Now this is going to be, you said, when will this be available for people to watch it after the fact?
The Facebook Live will stay up on our Facebook indefinitely, however long. So once this wrap, on the website, right? This video, like I'll cut it up a little bit. I'll take the Patreon stuff off. This is recorded all the way through. The Patreon stuff will go on the Patreon. That we're trying to get that built up a little bit more. There's, it's mainly our true to heart fans, like people we know personally and all that. Just, they're just supporting the product. But yeah, that'll be on there. The YouTube and the audio of this, which will be on Spotify, iHeart, all those outlets will be next Sunday.
Okay.
So I'll take this, edit it up during the week, get it on there, and then Sunday it'll be available, and we'll start blasting it out everywhere,
not this
wherever
Sunday,
we can.
Following Sunday.
Yeah, not tomorrow, but the Sunday afterwards. So
gotcha. Easter. Okay.
Yeah. So it'll be out on Easter.
Okay. So I had someone who wanted to tune in, who wanted to know if they can watch it later do the Facebook Live thing, watch it later tonight. Will it be up tonight?
Oh yeah. Yep. It'll be, just have them go over to Facebook Live, / Happy Hour Pod, and it'll be there. So, and I tagged you in it. So if they go over to it, it'll be up.
Cool.
I'll also add it to our story also. So all they need to do is click on the story and it'll go right to the video.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
All right.
Great.
It, brother. We got to come
Thanks,
out
guys.
And, see one of your shows one day too. Once everything opens up, we'll say, hey.
Let me know if there's a show you guys want to come to, and I'll make sure we get you on the guest list.
Oh, awesome. That's cool shit. That's cool shit. So
absolutely.
Maybe you still do stuff with the several species. You're still with that now, right?
Oh yeah.
Maybe we'll do one of the several species shows because that
would be cool.
Yeah. So
that would be great.
All right, brother.
All right. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Peace.
All right. That was good shit.